Thanks for coming today. I'm Joël, I'm a volunteer here at Arosha. Has anybody not been here? Oh yeah, you've not been here the last times. Okay. So I'm a volunteer at Arosha, and Arosha is a Christian organization that is working for the conservation of the environment. Here we don't have really specifically climate change oriented topic actions, but we do want to raise awareness on the subject, and so we started this series of presentations. And the reason why we do this is because as a Christian organization that is focused on conservation, our goal is to care for God's creation, and we want to involve as many people as possible in this act of honoring our Creator and our God. And we also believe that tackling environmental issues requires joint efforts in action, as well as a commune sense of responsibility. So that's why we do this. With this in mind, we started this series of presentation. This one is the last. I just want to say that I'm not an expert of the subject. I'm not a climatologist or anything, but so that's why I wanted to remain, as we said, as fact-based and science-based as possible. So don't hesitate to stop me if you don't understand something. I mean, if there's something that I say and you don't understand. If you have a question, you can keep it for the end, because maybe I will just answer it later. Okay, so the topic today, you can show the next slide. Actually, yeah. Next. This is the summary. Okay. So the topic today is about energy. Maybe some of you may think that it's going to be some sort of advertisement for renewables. This is not the subject I chose. So when you hear, you can show the next slide. When you hear, okay, energy. Wait. When you hear, before, can you show before? Okay, yeah. When you hear energy, what is the first thing that you think about?
Our own energy.
Yeah.
Or the thing that makes us move.
Okay. Yeah.
The sun.
Yeah.
Heating my house.
Heating your house. Yeah. Another answer?
Electricity.
Electricity. Yeah.
Pumping water.
Yeah. This is usually the things that people think about first. Basically the electricity bill or the gas bill. Yeah. But this is, in a way, this is the wrong answer, and I'll show you why later. Of course, it's not wrong because it involves energy, but you will understand my thought process. You can show the next slide. So the definition of energy, it's what quantifies the change of state of a system. To put it more simply, you can show the next one. What quantifies the transformation of the environment? Which means that whenever something in the environment changes, well, not just in the environment, but whenever something changes of state, whether it's a change of temperature, a change of shape, a change of speed, energy is always involved. Now, to use energy, humans need to extract one from the environment, put it into a converter, and then use it for the purpose that is wanted. Historically, the first energy converter that humans used, you know what it was?
Fire.
Sun? What is
Fire.
Fire? No.
When you what?
Eating.
No.
Food.
Yeah.
Eating and food.
It's the human body.
So you get
The human body is the first energy converter that humans used. You can show the next slide. We eat food, we transform the energy that is present in food into mechanical energy or heating. Heat. Then after that, we started using renewable energies. Yeah, it's true. It's renewable energies. You can show the next slide. So, for example, oxen or windmills, sails, firewood, all of these are renewable energies. And that's what we've been using for most of humanity's history. So we tend to think that renewable energies are future, but actually they're the past. And eventually we invented the motor, which allowed us to make use of an energy that we could not use before, because an animal doesn't eat coal or a human doesn't eat oil. I mean, not sure, petroleum. Now this is so powerful. You can show next slide. Yeah. This was so powerful that we now barely use any of the previous energy sources. So whenever now you hear energy nowadays, you can think, I mean, energy nowadays means machines, and machines means energy. There is not one working without the other. With this evolution, we can see that renewables are not modern in any way. They are actually the past. For the last 200 years, we have been trading renewable energies for fossil fuels. Let me show you this in the next. What happened?
I don't know what happened.
Yeah, next. No. Okay, good. Next one. Yeah. Next one. Yeah. So for the last 200 years, we went from for renewable navy to fossil navy, because it's simply more efficient. You can show the next slide. We went from renewable transportation to fossil transportation. We also went, you can show next, from renewable agriculture to fossil agriculture. We went from renewable construction work to fossil construction work. You can see the trend. We went from renewable industry to fossil industry because, again, it's more efficient. So now, how powerful is this? You can show the slide. So imagine that you are hiking for a whole day. You go to I don't know, the Alps or Pyrenees or whatever mountain, and you hike for a whole day. You go up the mountain, you walk with your backpack, and then you arrive at the top of the mountain at your destination, and you eat a really fat meal because you spend a lot of energy and you sweat a lot. Okay, and you think that you have spent a lot of energy. Well, while you may have hiked an elevation gain of 2,000 meters, you have actually produced the equivalent of a ridiculous 0.5 kilowatt hours with your legs. You can do the next slide. Next again. Yeah. So this is just 0.5 kilowatt hours. Now imagine you're digging a hole in the ground of 6 cubic meters. So it's approximately 2 by 2 by 1.5. It's quite a big hole. If you had to do it by hand, it would also take you a full day, I think, of work. Well, doing this, at the end of the day, you would have spent approximately 0.05 kilowatt hours. So it's 10 times less. Now, in just 1 liter of fuel, you can do this. Yeah. In 1 liter of fuel, how do you think there is in 1 liter of fuel in terms of energy? You don't know? Okay. There is approximately 10 kilowatt hour of energy in just 1 liter of fuel that is at the ridiculous price of €1.50 approximately. If you convert it into a machine, put the machine into mechanical energy, it's from 2 to 4 kilowatts hour. So this just gives you an idea of how powerful fossil fuels are. So it just means, what that means is that in 1 liter of fuel you have as much energy as in 10 to 100 days of human work. You can show the slide. Now 1 kilowatt hour of mechanical energy provided by human at work in a Western country, paid at minimum wage, will cost between 200 and 2,000 euros just for 1 kilowatt hour. On the other hand, the machine will do the same for a price of a couple of dozen cents. So this shows how fossil fuels have radically changed our societies. Said differently, when we went from human labor to machine work, we were able to divide in just 150 years the unit cost of the transformation of the environment by a few hundred to a few thousand times. Let me say again. When we went from human labor to machine work, we were able to divide in 150 years the unit cost of the transformation of the environment by a few hundred to a few thousand times. That is where our purchasing power comes from. So, why was it wrong when I asked you the first question to answer, to associate energy to your electricity bill or gas bill? It's because only a few percentages of your revenues are spent in direct energy consumption, but it's not representative of how much energy you are spending, you are using every day for your daily consumption. Who's wearing clothes right now?
Everybody.
Okay, nobody raises hands. Okay, I guess
No,
nobody
I
wears clothes. I guess. Okay. So just for the clothes that you are wearing, there has been hundreds, thousands even of machines working for that. Tractors, combine harvesters. You can show next slide. Tractors, combine harvesters, different kinds of trucks, spinning mills, computers, etc. Like thousands of machines for those clothes. And this is true for clothes, but this is true for anything in our daily lives. To wrap our minds around how powerful this is, let me give you some historical statistics. You can show next slide. So prior to the 1800s, it's okay. It would take centuries to build cathedrals, when now it takes a year or two to build a skyscraper. It is estimated that people spent at least half of their income in food back then, when in 2021 it accounted for 14% of EU's household expenditure. In 1800, retirement was basically inexistent in all countries. And 2 years ago, in France, you may have seen this in the news, but there was massive riots because the retirement age was going to go from 62 to 64. About 2/3 of the population were farmers then. So about 65-70% of the population was farmers. 2 years ago, in 2020, they represented 4% of total employment in the EU. So from almost 70% to 4%. Before the 70s, it was very uncommon to have paid holidays. Nowadays, most countries have between 8 and 30 days of paid holidays on average. 3% of the world population was living in urban areas, only 3% in 1800. By 2008, it rose to over 50% of global population, and will probably be, it is estimated to be 66% by 2100. Why so? Because it's just for a simple physical reason, is that now we are able to transport food from outside the city to the center of the city in a container that is refrigerated and that can go fast. But if you have to carry this by horse at room temperature, it's not going to be possible. So you could never have a city like London, Paris, or Lisbon if you don't have the trucks that we have now. Prior to 1930, no country in the world had more than 10% of its population who attended tertiary education. So if all those massive changes happened, it's not because of the kindness of our politicians, or because we're smarter than our ancestors. It's because there is a physical reason behind it. This reason is that we have superpowers. Okay, so the power of a human is 100 watts for legs and 10 watts for arms. Do you know what's the power of a light bulb, approximately? The power of a light bulb.
60. The maximum power?
It can range approximately from the same 10 watts to 100 watts. So basically, the human body has the power of a light bulb. Yeah. In the morning it's 10 watts.
And hopefully they go 100.
A tractor, for example, is 600 kilowatts, which means it's approximately it's equivalent to 600 pairs of legs. A digger is 100 kilowatts, or 10,000 pairs of arms. A truck is 400 kilowatts, or 4,000 pairs of legs. An airplane is 100 megawatts, or 1 million pairs of legs. And a rolling mill is also the same approximate power. It's 10 million pairs of arms. So this goes to show how much energy we're using in our daily lives. And it also explains why global energy consumed per capita exploded during the last decades. You can show the next slide. So this is the global energy consumption per capita in the world. We don't really see it, but it's 1860 to nowadays, like 2016. So you can see that apart from wood energy per capita, all of energy types have been increasing, and mostly fossil fuels. So I will talk about it later, but you can see that what we're talking about all the time, the renewable energies, they're actually, it's just this. When fossil fuels are all of this. Yeah. So the global energy consumption nowadays is of 20 megawatts hour, which boils down to say that each human increased its production power by 200. So said differently, it's like as if each one of us had constantly 200 slaves working for us. Actually, in Western countries, it's more between 500 and 1,000. And in the higher social classes that we are part of, it's between 1,000 and 2,000. So it's like we have between 1,000 and 2,000 slaves, machine slaves working for us every day. So when we traded human labor for machines, we inevitably increase our energy consumption, because remember I said before, having machines working for us means consuming energy. And this energy is fossil, so it's causing climate change. And again, without all these machines, there would never have been such an increase in purchasing power. So to think that in 25 years we will replace all of this by just this, because 25 years is the limit we have, it's the deadline, 2050, while maintaining economic growth. Let's say it's quite unreasonable. Which doesn't mean we should work to replace those fossil fuels, but you see the point. It's going to be difficult to maintain the same level of economic growth while replacing all of this by renewables in just 25 years. Again, if you remember my first presentation, those fossil fuels, because they are disturbing the carbon cycle, they are emitting carbon atoms to the atmosphere, for those who were there. And so they're causing climate change, and they're threatening our life conditions. Nowadays it's quite common to think that, yes, fossil fuels were the energy that we've been using for the last 200 years, but nowadays we've been trading them for renewables, right? I hope it was true. You can show the slide. This is the evolution, not the consumption of energy, but the evolution of each type of energy in the world from between 2000 and 2018. You can see that, yes, hydroelectricity, wind electricity, nuclear, solar, etc., they have increased. They have not reduced, they have increased, but not as much as coal, oil, and gas, unfortunately. And so that's the part of the problem, because we are indeed increasing all these types of electricity, but we're not reducing these, when these are actually the problem. And these should only help us to replace these. To take an image that's not from me, but I think it's very helpful to understand. It's like, imagine a person that is alcoholic and drink every day 1 liter of whiskey, and goes to the doctor, and the doctor says, oh, you should really reduce your consumption of alcohol. And the person says, okay, no problem, and goes back home, and now drinks 1.5 liters of whiskey, but also add 1 cup of orange juice on top of it. It doesn't solve the problem at all. It just adds something else that doesn't have anything to do with it. So adding renewable energies to fossil fuels is not going to help the problem. The point is just to reduce those. So you can show the next slide. In conclusion, I just want to sum it up with this sentence, that our society is on drugs. It feels really good, but it's not sustainable. And it's really urgent that we get rid of this addiction. Now, even if we have to get rid of this addiction, the separation will be most likely very painful, especially for the richest, who are very addicted to this fossil fuel drug. Yeah. Thank you for your attention. That was. So these are my sources. This is a comic book, a French comic book that came out 3 years ago. It's I would say most of my presentation is based on that comic book. It's a really interesting one, and that's why I chose to get inspired a lot from it, because it's really condensed. There are lots of condensed information. So I strongly recommend reading it. It's very helpful in understanding climate change and our societies. Yeah. So thank you again. If you have any question, feel free.
I have a question for you. I haven't done much research, but why is geothermal so that is it very expensive to have geothermal energy?
So geothermal is very good for the environment. So
Yeah.
for those who don't know, it's basically using the heat of the ground
From the ground,
to
yeah.
heat buildings
Yeah.
and buildings. It's very sustainable. The only thing is that it requires, so it's not so expensive on the long term, but it requires lots of big infrastructures that are very expensive at first. So it's a big investment, and that's usually the problem, is that it requires a big investment at first, and then it will barely cost anything because it's just a little bit of electricity to pump the thing.
Energy from
But
it. I know it's very efficient because I knew someone who used it in Germany.
Yeah.
But I've not heard about it anywhere else.
Yeah. In France also you cannot do it everywhere. I know in France you can do it most
areas in the
places,
world, yeah.
but you cannot do it everywhere. I don't know what are the technicalities of this. But,
Okay.
but it should definitely be
Yeah,
more.
places like New Zealand that has, or
Different.
Iceland, it has so much geothermal energy. Yeah.
Portugal also, sorry, I was not really good in Portugal. No, sorry. And also
Geothermal.
in the north of Portugal there's a possibility. You need the tectonics, the right tectonics.
But given the state of our world, the size of our world population, and the state of, shall we say, technology, we have to use, surely, and particularly in countries in Africa, for example, there are many people who still live in situations where they do not have a cheap, reliable source of energy, and they have to cook their food on fires and such like. Fires all often in enclosed spaces, which seriously affects the health of those people, and they need access to cheap energy, which would come from readily available supplies of coal and such like, and yet they have been refused access to that by, say, the World Bank. The World Bank does not allow loans to countries which are going to invest in, shall we say, coal technology, so that those people can, if you like, be lifted out of the poverty. And that should surely be the first concern, the people and their health, and they need that, and they should have that. And China is supplying that, or providing that in some instances, but on an unpleasant way, and in a way that would also, because they are only interested in their short-term gain in those countries, and that should continue to use the coal and the fossil fuels generally, and we have to, if we want to look after the health of the people that are on the planet at the moment, and that should surely be the first concern, because when you consider the energy requirement in total, the idea that this is going to be replaced by wind or solar energy, and the solar energy, where do you store all the energy that is required? Because at the moment, there's no decent way of storing it, and you require, again, all sorts of investment that is totally new and which people forget about. Why do you store the energy for?
Storage of
massive cities without. That's why we
so
have
the
power
storage
stations
is a
on
complex
call.
thing,
In other words, they can be switched on and off at need. And that's why you probably need nuclear power in a short, you have to use it. But the first concern is the people. And it is good to know to be concerned about the planet, but the planet was for man. Remember what the original injunction to man was? Increase, fill the earth, populate
So
the earth.
I see your point. Now the problem is that with those fossil fuels, we have not experienced it because we were the first one to do it in Western countries. So when we started burning fossil fuels, it only brought us economic growth and all the things that went with it. And so we only had the good sites of burning fossil fuels. But we did not have the climate change problem.
Yeah.
But now that it has gone worldwide, the problem is that if we keep going this way, the climate change will also bring lots of problems for the poorest, and the fact that there will be for example, let me just give you an example. One of the consequences of climate change is the scarcity of water and the loss of yield.
The thing I think we'd like to
Loss of yields in crops. And so if those people that are the poorest, because they will be the first one to be hit by the consequences of climate change, it should not be, we should not, I think, make an opposition between letting them burn fossil fuels and leaving the consequences of climate change, because there will be, like, they are the ones who will be the first one to experience climate change. So I think we have to find compromises between those two, and of course we have to think about the social aspects. But when we're thinking of climate change, we're not just thinking about the environment. We are thinking about the population, and especially the poorest in our world.
I would say that climate is changing and we will never control it, and therefore to expend great energy and to expend great attention on trying to control something which is beyond us. Temperatures have been much hotter in the past. At the time of Christ and the time, before that even, there were higher temperatures than we experience today. And that, to say that climate change is we can control it, I do not believe it. That's in the hands of the good Lord. We should deal with the environment and deal with the situations that we face and work with them and help the people through those situations. And as things change, we manage the change, manage ourselves, and part of the management is just managing the environment as we find. When we have wildfires, often it's because we have failed to manage the environment and control and do the controlled burns that have been done in times past that should be done in order to prevent the wildfires that go out of control.
So
there are plenty, we should not. Carbon dioxide, well, it's increasing, yes, but we know that there is a cycle of carbon dioxide, and that most of the infrared rays that are contributing to increasing temperature, they have been absorbed. Any further increase in carbon dioxide will not affect that materially concerning the infrared energy that is, that may cause an increase in temperature. But as I say, temperatures have been higher in the past, so we should not be unduly concerned about that, but rather live within, if you like, God's creation and manage what is there rather than trying to control it, because you're never going to get the agreement that people think is going to even attempt to, because it won't work anyway.
So I've touched about this subject of climate change and the cycle of carbon in my first presentation. If you are interested, I can send what I did, and we can discuss it. Basically, I can't answer on everything because I'm not an expert. But to tell you from what I know, yes, levels of carbon dioxide have been already very high in the atmosphere in previous stages of the Earth, but they have never, the fluctuations of carbon dioxide have been always much slower than what they have been now. It always took much more time to fluctuate, and so all of nature has been able to adapt to this. But now the problem that we see with climate change is that it has changed in only the matter of 50 years approximately, because you can see the temperatures rising approximately starting from the 70s, And yeah, for thousands of years they've been quite stable. There are fluctuations, but they do not go above a certain threshold, neither below it, actually. And for the last 50 years they have been above that threshold. And we could not see it at first, or at least not feel it. But now we can totally see the
I don't believe you. I believe that we're totally incorrect in the conclusions that we try to draw from, if you like, ice cores and such like. And
I just wanted to add to this conversation, because India always has a problem when they have COP and they don't sign because of fossil fuels, because India's argument is we have 1 billion people, most people live below the poverty line, they need the fossil fuels. If we don't give it to them, we're going to start a revolution and we will have civil war, because we have a lack of resources. The hydropowers are not working so effectively anymore because there's not enough water, there's not enough, it's all seasonal, the monsoons come or they don't come. And then you have a lot of subsistence farmers now killing themselves. The suicide rate in the farmers in India is really, really high, because they want to continue these old primitive practices because that's the only thing to save their livelihoods.
my son actually spent a couple of months in Russia, India. He was working for them, and he was working. Part of the work that he was doing was elephants, rampant elephants, and trying to stop the elephants from eating the farmers.
So the thing is, it becomes a political issue. That's the thing.
That's why the environmental and social issues have to, they are tied together. And it's really difficult to treat one without treating the others. Because that's why information is really important. Because when people don't know what's happening, they don't know that their purchasing power comes from fossil fuels, for example, because this is the point of this presentation. Whenever there is inflation, for example, they are accusing the president or the king or whatever as if it was their fault. But as you can see, and with a longer explanation, we could talk about it as well. But we can see it's not. Like on the long term, it's not a matter of who's the president or who's the leader of the country, because actually in the post-war era, you can see that there was economic growth in all over Europe. Didn't matter who was the president, who was the leader of the country, there was economic growth. But after a certain point, we reached a point where it was not possible anymore. So the economic growth started to decrease, and now we're at the point where physically, if you look at physical terms, not GDP, but physical terms, degrowth is already happening. If you look at the tonnage of the amount of goods that are transported by trucks, which is a good indicator of how many things we're selling. Since 2007, it has reached its peak, and it's decreasing since 2007. So we're selling less and less and less things since that point in Europe. So what that means is that we have to spread information so that people are aware of what's happening. They understand the pros and cons. They understand what are the technicalities of this, and so they are not putting their hope into some political leader that will tell them, promise them the moon, and they will be able to say, okay, we have to make a choice between this and this. We have to, we have to make a choice, and so we'll prefer this. We'll prefer to have water for farmers than water for swimming pools and whatever. It's just a matter of societal choices, but I think, and this was the point of these presentations as well, these will be impossible. It will be impossible to take place without proper information, and that's why I say again, social and environmental issues are tied together. That's why education is very important.
In the 1960s, there were warnings that this would happen because of increasing population. When you actually look at the way the world
in the wrong
population
places, the world population
is
is
growing,
the wrong
and
places.
how do you marry the two?
Yeah.
The
But
two
the amazing
things.
thing is we
If
have
there
been
is-
able to do it. We have been able to feed the world. I mean, there are the greater part of the increase is well fed. It is adequately fed.
It's-
But
it's
there are
not-
still plenty who
It's
are
not
not.
just about food, though, is it? It's how we make the
But-
food.
but
But
we have
again,
to-
again,
and
if there
you
is,
need
if there
the
was an increase,
technology.
such an increase in population, world population, it's not. I mean, if there was an increase in world population, it's because we started using fossil fuels.
Mm.
It seems strange, but it is because the fact that we started using fossil fuels is what enabled us to make medications.
Yeah.
It's what allowed us to eradicate food shortages because we were able to, when there was no more food in certain place, to import it from somewhere else in trucks, again refrigerated trucks. So all these fossil fuels is what allowed us to eradicate food shortages, as well as reduce the death rates of babies, and so it's not the problem in itself is not the amount of people there is on Earth.
No,
Of
it's-
course, if
it's
we were
that
5
balance.
million, 5 millions, it wouldn't be a problem. But the fact that we're so many on Earth is because we started using fossil fuels. And actually, what I've showed you before on the previous slide, it was the world energy consumption per capita. So it shows that yes, world population has increased, but it's also world consumption of energy per capita that has increased. Yeah. So meaning we could be 10 billions on Earth if we were living in a much lower
Simpler
carbon
way.
emission way,
Yeah.
in a much more sober way, it wouldn't be a problem.
Yes, but we cannot do that now. We cannot just say, oh, well, let's not live at that level, because you take even your own, iPad or whatever, you're using energy, and can you imagine now that what life would be like without access to that? And are we inviting all the world then to join us in that situation?
But to be honest,
But
I wouldn't mind. Like, if you ask me personally, I don't care about the stuff that.
Yes, but then your access to, if you like, communication of various sorts, whether it's communication or for data and communication for all sorts, it's then more difficult to I mean, shall we use carrier pigeons then, or what? It's,
Yeah, but I still think we have options that we can do.
Yeah.
I don't think we can change the world.
Yeah.
No,
I agree
exactly.
with you. I think
Exactly.
Yeah.
we cannot
But-
do it, but
Yeah.
we can, at the same time, I think we can change the world.
Yeah.
Because it's our decisions who are going
Yeah.
to make things
Yeah.
different.
Yeah.
But the
And I'm sorry, but if you keep saying that, oh, this is too big a problem, we're never going to do it, that gives you also an excuse to not doing little things.
Yeah.
No.
And the little things, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
let me
No,
just
I
finish.
agree with.
The little things, they actually count.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they've been, because obviously Joël was presenting, and in a way I'm glad, the very terrible scenarios, which it's helpful to shake us all up. But there's been little small things that people are doing that are actually causing a lot of differences. That's why a Rocha existed.
Yeah.
Otherwise, there
That's
was no point of having a Rocha.
Yeah.
It
But-
has to
Because
start
we
with
really
each
believe,
individual.
we really
Yeah.
believe we can do something.
Correct,
Individuals.
but the primary thing you see is the changing of people's hearts and attitudes.
Yeah, but that's another discussion.
That's
maybe
from the
for
gospel. The gospel, that's what the primary thing. And you
I
use
agree with you. I'm also Christian. Rocha is a Christian organization, and I think we can down all of that to our relationship with God. But still, as humans, we have responsibility. That's what God, because we are intelligent, and that's what God told us. To.
I took environmental geography in the 90s in university in India, and I was saying to people, stop using plastic bags and and they didn't listen. And we didn't have any of this, I had to use books from a library that were like 10 years old or whatever.
Exactly.
However, I go back now the mentality hasn't changed. People are doing worse things than they did
Yes.
30 years ago, and then says, why shouldn't I have it? It's available to me now, right? I'm earning more and I need it and I want it, and it's just horrifying. Nothing has changed.
Yeah.
Yes,
Nothing.
but the thing about
Exactly.
the plastic in the environment is we can control it. When you use it,
Yeah.
it is then
Yeah.
indulging in the recycling of these
Yeah, exactly,
things.
but
That
they
is what
don't
we have
think
failed
like
to
this.
do.
A
But
small percentage will, but the
that
majority
is
doesn't.
possible. But
But
the
we
point,
don't need half the things we expect to
Yeah,
have.
yeah.
maybe not,
Yeah.
I agree we don't need them, but there are many things that certainly are convenient.
Life was
And
much
the
easier
ease of
when we
making
were
a
small.
call to get help to go to hospital or whatever, these things are, do affect us. But I would still say that carbon dioxide, and yes, it's going to happen. Climate is changing, but we are never going to control it, and we should focus more on
Joel,
the
sorry,
environment.
That's fine. Okay.
Deal with the environment.
I mean, I encourage you to talk if you
Interrelated.
want in between yourself. I definitely need a glass of water. So.